Welcome back, everyone, to just another day in the life of a military wife. And, it being Christmas this week, it got me thinking about what life has, thrown at us and the different separations we've experienced as military families. And there is a particular song that my kids have been singing a lot, and it's because it's kind of the military spouse anthem during Christmas time for those of us who are separated from our spouse, our service member. And my kids can literally sing this song almost word for word, which tells you how much I have played it and sang it over the years. And it is All I Want for Christmas Is You. Because really, when it comes down to it and our loved one is away specifically for Christmas and all holidays, all we want is them. That's really all we want. And there's been quite a few years where all I wanted for Christmas was my husband. So that is what we're going to kind of talk about today, is what it's like for service members in today's world to be separated from their families at Christmas, and what it's like for their families back home. And yeah, so let's just dig on in. You are listening to Life of a Military Wife, and I am your host, Sam Wolf. All right, so what are some of the many reasons why service members are separated from their families during the holidays, specifically Christmas? And there are quite a few reasons why service members are gone for the holidays. And the first is basic training and advanced training. So basic training and advanced training can and do take place during holidays. Most holidays, they just work right through it. They just keep going. The one exception largely is basic training and advanced training is Christmas. They will send them home for a block leave or for a week or so. That is great and hard at the same time, because great, they get to see their family, hard to go back afterwards for some people. Sometimes it's motivating, so it just depends on the person. So the first time we experienced separation was for my husband's basic training, and he was gone for Thanksgiving, was home for Christmas, and was gone for right after New Year's. So we didn't have a lot of time together, but he was actually home on Christmas Day. So that was really, really nice. Considering we had a brand new baby and everything. So, the other instances in which they could be gone is for some sorts of training. There are training that will just continue straight through the holidays, regardless of, anything, because it needs to get done. And so it's the needs of the military. If they've got to get training done and that's the slot you've got, then that's what you do, because you've got to be ready when the time comes. And so there are ones like we call them war games. Not really, that's the best term I can think of that would be easy to understand, is those ones can and do happen during the holidays and just keep going. That's what happens. But then there are other ones like schools or leadership trainings, to promote. Those don't typically take place over the holidays. Well, correction, they do take place over holidays, but they don't typically take place over Christmas. Again, most people try to give... Christmas tends to be the exception to the rule when it comes working through the holidays. And however, that just because it tends to be the exception for the rule for training doesn't mean it always is. So there will be instances where training or some sort of temporary duty will take place over the holidays and separate people. The other one that is actually very common is hardship tours. Hardship tours are where the service member is assigned to a duty station for a year, typically, sometimes more, where the family is unable to come with them due to limited space for families, or it not being a safe zone for families. So the most common one is South Korea. There is limited space for families to accompany, but it is possible some families do accompany. Also, there's some in Latin America, there's Egypt, there's quite a few places where there are hardship tours. And in those instances, it is possible on occasion to get leave for the holidays. However, it is not always possible because it can be super expensive. Everyone wants to go home for the holidays, and so not everyone can. It's complicated. And they need people still working. And then the other is deployments. And particularly at the height of the war on terror, there was at the beginning instances where deployments could last up to 18 months. And in those cases, you could quite easily have 2 consecutive Christmases in the field deployed. So those are not uncommon reasons for us to not have our soldiers or sailors or Marines or airmen at home. Our service members are just gone. So that said, I particularly wanted to first address some stories or just feedback I got on what it was like for people, the service members themselves, when they were away from home on Christmas. And the two people that I talked to both were referring to hardship tours. So I'm going to mostly address that. The first one was my husband. I was talking to him about what it was like for him and what he did when he was in his hardship tour and he was gone. And where he was located, there was 2 different groups of his same unit that were separated, and he was in the smaller group in one location and his other group was in another location. And there were perks and there was downsides to that. The downside was they didn't have a chaplain in their location, so that was complicated. There was having no chaplain. However, they were a really tight-knit group. And so for the holidays, they found decorations and people's spouses sent decorations. And so they had like a little Christmas tree that I sent and some garland and other stuff. And they had stuff that people had left there. And so they decorated. They did their best to make it feel like Christmas, even though it did not look like a typical Christmas. But anyway, then on Christmas Eve, they got together and they had a cookout and a bonfire. Like I said, because they didn't have a chaplain where they were at, there wasn't a chaplain available for Christmas services. They did a gift exchange like a white elephant, but they did have to actually do some office work and work on Christmas. So their big celebration was more Christmas Eve. We were lucky enough that at the time he had a hardship tour, technology had improved and there was enough internet connections had improved also that we were able to video chat on occasion and things like that. And so that really helped, especially on Christmas, and just being able to spend time or send videos or things like that. So he felt included in what we were doing back home. Our other friend was in South Korea, and he said that he was lucky enough that there was a chaplain, and the chaplain did do services and stuff for them at Christmas. Because in South Korea, some families do come, there was a lot more attention where he was at on making the families and the kids feel less homesick because there was no way to go see it was just too cost prohibitive to go back to the States at Christmas time. And so there wasn't a lot of focus put on the geographically single soldiers, the ones that couldn't bring their families, or the actually single soldiers in the barracks. So what he did was he had a leftover turkey from Thanksgiving that he had gotten somehow, and he cooked it up. And while he was cooking up, everyone kind of was like, oh, what are you doing? What's going on? And he's like, hey, grab something. And they kind of had like an impromptu potluck Christmas dinner. And he was really just trying to get everyone together to build that sort of camaraderie and community. And That helped, especially with the holidays, because they were so far from home. And at that point in time, technology wasn't widely available where you could video call as easily as you can now. And so they really didn't get to video call their families and see them on Christmas. They could make phone calls, but it was a little bit more expensive at the time and difficult to arrange. Plus, there's also a huge time gap between South Korea and the States, especially certain parts of the United States and the East Coast. So that can really affect whether or not you get to spend a lot of time with your family on Christmas. If you're at the opposite end of the planet, it's going to limit what overlapping awake time you have. But what he did was he started a video diary to kind of help him talk about his feelings and what he was experiencing and just things that he thought his wife would be interested in or his kids would be interested in, so that he was actually just getting those feelings and those emotions out. It really helped him feel like he wasn't so alone, so that they could, share in what he was experiencing. Although he did admit that he went through all of this effort to make this whole huge vlog for his wife and kids, and then he lost it and they never really saw it. So it helped at the time, even if it didn't end up fulfilling its purpose initially. The other thing that they were really blessed with was care packages from home. He said that he got care packages often from family members, his wife in particular, and mom, those sorts of things. And they were a highlight. They really helped get through those hard times, and especially photos. He really loved seeing photos because he had a brand new baby that was only a week old when he left. And so he had to kind of grow up long distance from his dad, and getting to see photos, something he could actually hold of his baby growing, was great. He really, really enjoyed that. And just kind of to bleed into the other side of what it's like for the family members when they're so his wife, to compensate for him not being able to be there to see their boys grow, she bought journals, and she would write in the journal every day things that the boys did and put pictures and everything in. And so when he got back, there was 4 journals or something, quite a few journals full of stuff, so that he was able to read it and feel like he didn't miss out on much, be involved, at least aware of all of these little funny stories and things that had happened. So that was one way that she really worked, but she said it was just hard. Spending time with family was good. Distractions, focusing on other things, those are good ones. Okay, so Recording Sam coming to you kind of post facto. After I wrapped, I noticed that I'd received a contribution from a female service member who had been deployed for the holidays, for Christmas in particular, and I really felt like it would be valuable to add her perspective and experience that she shared. That said, Michelle said that the one thing she really remembered was that Robin Williams and Lance Armstrong and some other comedians and musicians who she doesn't really remember the names or recognize the names, for, came to visit them, the service members, for Christmas. And she only remembered Robin Williams because she had seen Mrs. Doubtfire as a kid. She didn't really know much about his comedic style or anything like that. So she was kind of shocked because it was a Christmas thing, that it was, kind of risque. There was lots of grown-up humor. Considering the audience was completely adults, it was fine, but she was just a little surprised. So that, and, it was kind of neat seeing him in person when she had grown up with seeing him in the movies. The other thing that happened was her fiance at the time's mom sent her a small Christmas tree to decorate her room. So I kind of just wanted to share that also, back to what I was saying before. And that kind of got me into what happened when my husband was gone. We have the little like Murphy's Law of military life that when your spouse is gone, whatever can go wrong will go wrong because it just does. And our little Murphy's Law totally took an effect the Christmas my husband was gone. So that Christmas started off with me getting, no, wait. One of my sons got a respiratory infection. Then I got the flu. Then someone got pink eye. Then, no, yeah, he got croup. One of my kids got croup. So yeah, my youngest got croup. Then I got the flu. Then my two youngest got the flu. No, then someone else got the flu. And then my two youngest got pink eye. And it was literally like 3 weeks of just being massively ill. And my husband's brother and his wife and daughter were going to come and stay Christmas with us. And I call them literally like the day they were going to leave. And I'm like, P.S. we have been sick with like everything you could be sick with. And my kids currently have pink eye, which is like massively contagious. Well, it's okay, not massively, but it's contagious enough. And they weren't going to have been on their medication long enough to not be contagious by the time they got there. And I was super exhausted and wiped out that I wasn't sure I was going to have the house completely deep cleaned, before they got there. And it was just bad. And they're like, you know what? Don't worry about it. We got one kid. And if she gets pink eye, it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, oh my goodness, I love you. It was just really great to have them there, to have support, not have to be cooking every meal. My sister-in-law was really wonderful and made some freezer meals for me. To be able to have a built-in babysitter and like sleep in or different things like that. It was just great having them there. It was really wonderful. And I really appreciated them coming and spending that time with me so that I wasn't alone, especially when having just dealt with like sick kids. It would just have been completely miserable to have been by myself. So that was one thing that really helped me was I really liked being in my own home. I've never been a huge fan of traveling somewhere else for Christmas, because I think it's a complete nightmare to try to hide the presents so the kids don't see them on the way there and then transport all the stuff they get back home in addition to everything else you bring with you with little children on a road trip / vacation. So I've really always tried to spend Christmas at home. And I did not feel comfortable driving cross country in the winter. That's another factor. And flying with 3 kids by yourself? Oh, please no. Let's not go there. So, I mean, there are more adventurous people than me who've probably, done the winter road trip cross country by themselves without a spouse. I'm not one of them. Or flown with multiple children that were really young by themselves. Again, kudos. I totally celebrate you. I understand my limitations, though, and I have decided not to put myself in that position. So I was really, really blessed to be able to have family come to me. And that was a huge weight off my shoulders, breather. But not everyone has that or prefers that. And I did get some feedback from another listener who explained what she did. Okay, so looking at it, my notes actually, there was 2 contributors who said that they traveled to family. Kimberly said that she didn't feel like staying home was a good idea. She wanted to get away. Staying busy with family really helped make it easier on her. Lynn said she called it Operation Deny the Holidays, story of her existence. And basically her survival plan, because this has happened to her more than once, or at least that's what her response implied, was she traveled to family. She tried not to overcompensate her kids by spoiling them with extra presents. She tried to come up with experiences to pass the time so they had things to look forward to, events, things like that. And then to include traditions with their service, just make sure that they're keeping up the traditions that they would do when the service member was home, even though they're not. And and then remembering that it's going to pass, like it's going to be okay. You can do this. And that I think is a really common, it's just staying busy, not being alone. Those are huge factors. Like I said, anyone who is willing to travel to family, more power to them. I think in some ways that's extra novel and fun for the kids. I am not such an adventurous person. I am quite unadventurous when it comes to that. But keeping busy is a really good option. Having traditions that you can do with the spouse, so long distance. I know that year my husband was deployed, we did our 12 days of Christmas, that we always did, even though he wasn't there to help me with it. And that first I was really kind of daunted to do the 12 days of Christmas without him. But I kind of just made up my mind I was going to do it, and I did it. And I'm so glad I did, because now it's something that we just do. Daddy home, daddy not home, we just get it done. So if you don't know what the 12 days of Christmas is, the concept I grew up with is you pick a family or person, and each night leading up and ending on Christmas Eve, the 12 days before Christmas Eve, you drop off a little gift or something. And when I was a kid, the way we did it was just, on the first day of Christmas, and then we would give them one thing, and then we would do the number of things. And so it would be like one thing the first day, two things the second day, three, and it would just be different Christmassy things. When I got older and started doing it with my kids, I like having a theme or a structure, because it makes it easier for me to prepare it ahead of time. And then that way, all I have to do is grab the bag for that night and drop it off. And it's a lot less stress and worry. I remember doing it as a kid, and occasionally my mom would forget to come up with something because she was busy. And so we were last minute, 7:00 at night, trying to figure out something for day 8. And it was, sometimes a little hectic. So one thing I found was doing a nativity, where each day you give a piece of the nativity, and then on the last night you give the baby Jesus, and there's scripture verses with it. And I, because we're Christians, really think that's a wonderful way to bring Christ back into Christmas. So I found, via another 2 or 3 bloggers, this idea, and I kind of pieced it together. There are 3 different ideas, and made it my own, and we've just kind of run with it ever since. And there were days, I will admit, where I was not as good about dropping off the 12 days of Christmas gift on time, and I'm actually not very consistent on the time that I drop it off, but maybe that's a good thing, because we've never been caught, because the way we always do this is anonymous. The families never know who it is. Because that's how I was raised doing it. I think it's a lot more fun to give gifts anonymously, where people don't know it's you. I can't even explain why. I just really enjoy that. And I've kind of raised my kids with this concept now. So we do it, and they know where the little bag is, and they know which day it is, and they'll go grab the little bag, and we'll climb in the van, and we'll head out to whoever's house it is, and run up to the door and hang it on the doorknob and knock and run back to the car and drive off. Or we'll hide in the car with the lights off, so they think it's just an empty parked car, and hopefully they don't notice us. There's lots of ways to be sneaky. And the reason why we've been able to do this on post is because it's a nice thing. We're doorbell ditching a present. Because I actually talked to one of our friends who was an MP, who was security forces, and he said that it's fine, as long as it's a nice thing to doorbell ditch. So we've been able to do doorbell ditching stuff on our duty station, because it's always nice things. We're always leaving gifts, and nobody minds about getting free food and candy and gifts. So it all works out. But yeah, keeping those traditions alive really is important, and it'll help the kids feel like things are a little more normal. I love a live Christmas tree, so every year I take the kids with me to go get a Christmas tree, whether daddy's home or not. Sometimes my husband's at work when we have to go get the Christmas tree, so we pick out the Christmas tree without daddy. Mwahaha, we just do. The year he was gone, I loaded the kids up and I got them muffins, and we drove down and we got our Christmas tree and drove back, and my neighbor helped me carry it into the house and set it up by myself because my kids were too little to be much of assistance with that. So yeah, just making sure you've got those things to make it still feel like the holidays. I hope that's a nice little sneak peek for those of you who aren't military families on how we get through them without our service members. And for those of you who are military families, maybe some ideas if you are looking forward to or end up in that situation in the future on ways that you could possibly approach it. That said, I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas. On a side note, I have some really fun news to announce. Christmas came a little early for me. We have now passed the 500 downloads for Life of a Military Wife. The listener base is growing, and I'm really excited about that. I'm getting more feedback from and contributions from other military family spouses and service members, and that makes making it applicable so much easier. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and that you get to spend it with your families. So that said, you have listened to Life of a Military Wife, and I am your host, Sam Wolf.